My wife just sent me a picture. My luggage is arrived. Oh, brilliant. Yes. Come to Yeah, you will. And did you stay long? Yes. So it's absolutely rather nice. I would like to be here. Yeah. No, as long as we get this. Yeah.
Bravo.
Ma la diretta? Because we have the live streaming of this session and just waiting that they start. YouTube channel of the university and also our beautiful Prince channel. Yeah.
I give you the skipper and you can change slides by yourself.
Just a quick question. When I'm here, I will see the slides here with the comments or without?
You use it on the
You want the comments?
Yes, possible. Yes,
I have to ask the technician.
But
In case you would like to have
if it's possible, like in the full presentation in the comments here.
Yes.
My comments.
Or slides coming from it.
If it's duplicated,
It's difficult. I want to see the next slides coming. Otherwise, I'm and sometimes when you squeeze for time, you have to go down. Very good. Coming, very good.
Yeah. That's good.
Okay, good afternoon. Welcome. I'm very, very happy and honored to welcome you again for this afternoon session. And on behalf of the entire organizing committee of this International Conference on Corporate and Brand Heritage. As many of you probably know, we as a research group really are passionate about this topic, and we have been studying it for years. So we are now really thrilled to see that it's gaining more and more attention, both from scholars and also from companies, as we saw this morning from the roundtable session, and as also we noticed by the huge number of submissions that we received for this conference in a very short time that we opened the call. In organizing this conference, we set the goal of bringing together a community of scholars that now are working on this topic of corporate and brand heritage. creating an opportunity for meeting, reflection, discussion that we hope can become something like a regular event. So our aspiration is, in fact, to gather annually this community of scholars in a different venue, probably, and to reflect on conceptual, empirical developments of this topic, and also fostering a cross-fertilization across different analytical perspectives. This session, this plenary session now is an excellent example of this possible cross-fertilization between different analytical approach and perspective. I want to thank our keynote speakers for accepting our invitation, even if it arrived in a very short notice. And as I was saying, we will have an excellent example of possible fertilization of different perspectives. We will start with Mats Urde, that will focus on how to build an heritage brand. And then Fabien Pecot will focus his attention on the perceptions of customers about the heritage claim. And finally, Michael Rollison will illustrate how to use the method and historical perspective in this kind of corporate and brand heritage analysis. So I don't want to use any more time, and we will have at the end of this keynote the possibility of a couple of comments or questions, if any. So let's start with Mats. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me all the way to Italy and Naples. First time here, and I can congratulate you to a beautiful city with fantastic food and a lot of nice people. So I'm going to speak about activating corporate brand heritage. I always start with this beautiful painting. It's always my first picture, and it is Edouard Manet, and the painting is called The Girl in the Bar in Folies-Bergère. And there is a story, of course, to this painting, especially from my point of view, because when I saw it the first time in Paris, when I was still a PhD student in my salad days, I looked at it and I said, well, look, to the right and the left in the picture, you will see that there are bottles with a red triangle. And this is actually the first trademark to be registered in the world, 1865. This was the opportunity to actually own a mark forever. And this, I think, is a foundation that we should remember. But then we have the same beer bottle that was also, the beer as such was actually founded 1776. Trademark registered 1865, and then about 10 years ago, it was acquired by another company, and they paid $4 billion. That's a lot of money. But what's quite interesting is that when you look at the book value, it was $600 million. So $3.4 billion was something else. So my lecture today will be about something else. And I think also another reminder is that, okay, fair enough, the Bass beer, it's called the Bass beer, has been around a long time. But does that automatically mean and imply that you will have a strong brand? And my answer is probably not. So my agenda today will be about heritage. It will be about a framework how to build brands with a special angle on heritage brands. And I will also share with you a brief case to illustrate how a company that I have followed very closely actually managed to activate their brand heritage. Well, briefly about myself, half my time at university, half my time as a brand strategy consultant. The last couple of years, I've been actually spending my spare time, the little I have, on writing a book. I return to that. But I live in the south of Sweden, close to Copenhagen. And you can see a picture of our beautiful university. Well, actually, where we work is not that beautiful. We are talking about image here, ladies and gentlemen. And then companies that I have worked with, is you also see organizations. And I think that is also important to remember when we are saying corporate brands, that includes nonprofits, institutions, and so forth. And we can learn a lot and from different ways of looking at it. Briefly, this is what I do when I have spare time. I have an Icelandic horse and I love sailing. Going back a time a bit, exploring heritage, I need to, and I'm very happy to speak about my mentor, Professor Gracia from Harvard Business School, and my good friend, John Barmer from Brunel. And the three of us, we called ourselves the Three Musketeers when we were doing our study of the Swedish monarchy. That was the first field-based study of a monarchy that we know of. That inspired us to think about, well, this is heritage, but in a very special situation. But wouldn't heritage also be relevant for other companies and institutions? And this was the inspiration to our 2007 article. And here you have a picture of the red paint company that I will return to. The Nobel Prize is another institution that we've been working with. And you would maybe think that the world's most prestigious award would know a lot about how to manage their reputation. But you'd be wrong. They actually have done this more by experience. Now we are living in a new society with new types of media and new types of different awards coming up, and there is actually competition about being the world's most prestigious award. So branding and what we are doing here is actually relevant far, far beyond what one might think. So one important thing is the definition of a heritage brand. And my colleagues and I, we thought about it, and I'm also thinking about all you PhD students here in the room. We made a spectrum. We said a heritage brand and a brand with a heritage. And then you will be then invited to think, so where are we on this scale? Instead of just defining things. But a heritage brand is a brand that is using its heritage to position itself and differentiate, and the value proposition is directly related to the heritage. That's a heritage brand. Now, there is also what we call brands with the heritage. Brands with the heritage is a brand that actually has heritage, but it's not activated. So we can conclude that all brands have a history, long or short, but some brands have actually heritage and they have activated it. And there is, of course, a very interesting definition of between heritage and history. And I'm sure that Mike will explain a bit more about this later. But I have an example here. Let's see how this works. I'm sure you recognize this. The very famous Patek Philippe and their very famous slogan. You never actually own a Patek Philippe. You merely keep it for the next generation. This is a brand. This is a heritage brand. It's all about heritage, positioning, value proposition. the famous slogan. Now, there are other brands, there are other fine watchmakers in the world. In Switzerland, we find Tiger. But they have chosen not to activate their heritage as their main value proposition. It's part of their value proposition. It's like a legend of innovation. So another thing that when my colleagues and I wrote our first article about this was basically that when you look at a brand and you ask yourself, how much heritage is there? We came up with this simple framework, and one question to ask, and that we will later discuss in one of our sessions today, is what is the role of longevity? For how long have we been around? Well, that is of course important. What about the core values? Do we have core values, and what are they? Have we symbols that we have used for a long time? Is history important to us within our organization? And then track record, an interesting concept. How have we lived up to our promise over time? And then, of course, we have the mindset of management and leadership. To manage a brand with a heritage calls for a certain way of thinking beyond the fact that we need to build strong brands. So corporate brand building, and sorry for being now super basic, but I think we have to remind ourselves all the time that what is a brand? I think it's all about giving a promise and to earn a reputation and a clear position. And this is one way how we actually can fulfill the purpose of our company. If that is about making money, or is it some other purpose, be that as it may, a brand is still a promise. So we have product brands. We have learned about that in school for a very long time. But unfortunately, corporate brands when the mother is the brand, so to speak. The mother may have daughters, yes, of course, like product brands, but there is always a mother. And when we speak about product brands, it's often it. Coca-Cola, it is a nice soft drink. While when we speak about the engineering companies such as ABB, they are, or we are. Now, listen to we are. That actually says that the brand includes people in the organization, and people in the organization is part of the value proposition. And the people in the organization are the ones who actually live up to the promise. This has great implication for leadership and management. Again, simple framework. We have a promise, we have an audience, and of course we have a foundation, which actually happens to be the organization. We have the concept of internal, external, and image, what we project, then identity, who we actually are, deep down. Now, based upon this framework, I actually sliced it, and I came up with this framework that I call the brand matrix. As you can see, there is an internal side, external side, and a bridge. So, here are the questions you need to ask yourself. Here are the questions you need to ask yourself if you're going to try, thank you very much, to define who you are. First question, what engages us? Second question, what do we promise? Third question, who would we like to be in the marketplace? What do we know better than others? This is all about strategy, core competences. What do we promise, and what do we offer? You see there's a logic here. Culture, how do we work? How do we behave? What do we promise? And what kind of relationships would we like to shape with people around us? Our stakeholders, investors, employees, universities, and so forth. What about our personality? What's our character? What do we promise, and how do people actually recognize us? So you see here are 9 questions. Fairly simple. And you will try to fit them together, and this will be your platform and your foundation for building your brand. I wrote a book about this. But in principle, the whole idea here is that I'm taking it a step further now. So we speak about identity, defining, aligning, redefining. Step one. Step two, okay, let's talk and tell the world about ourselves based upon our identity. And here is the result. This is the outcome. A strong reputation that will help you in business, and also a clear position that will make you stand apart. So, I will now speak and relate what I just said to a case, and the red paint case. I start, as always, when a story comes around, with a signature story. So we have the king called Johann III, a long time ago, with a very fashionable beard. He traveled from Sweden to Europe, and he saw Berlin, Amsterdam, and other great cities. And what he saw was beautiful brick buildings, copper roofs. It looked very, very nice. Returning to his own kingdom, he saw these old wood houses that did not really impress anyone. And by the way, they were rot and so forth. So it was not good economy for the kingdom. So he said that he wanted a red paint, a paint that would protect the wood and it would look like brick. Look like brick. So, and if you travel the Swedish countryside, you will see a lot of red and white houses. Here's an old copper mine dating back to the 1100s. And here is the letter, the founding fathers, the king, the bishop, and some other wealthy men. And there is now a UNESCO heritage. Today, there is still actually production going on, surprise, surprise. And what they do, they take mineral, they crush it, and they heat it, and out comes a pigment. Here's the pigment, the red paint pigment. And one of my good friends, he became the CEO of this heritage company. And he said, Mats, life is not so great. I have a great responsibility now because look, the company is actually going bankrupt. What can we do? And he said, Mats, look, it's a nightmare. This is a marketing nightmare. We have products with poor quality. We have a category where nobody is investing in advertising. We have a category where the retailers are using our products to lure customers into the stores during spring, lowering the price. Nobody knows what it costs. So he said, this is a true nightmare. Product quality, promotion, etc. So they started by saying, let's look at the business model. And I used this case because you said, wasn't this about branding? But ladies and gentlemen, actually, if you're looking at the building of a brand, it is closely related to the business model. Very important to recall this. So what the executive team did in the red paint company was to let's start our own production. Next step, let's have selected retailers. Next, let's increase the price with 100%. That worked just fine because nobody knew how much 10 liters cost. And then finally, let's now trademark the product and the brand. And let's have a nice design of the buckets. Are we ready now? Is that a brand? Well, actually, no. I don't think so, because when we spoke with the people in the team here, we said that, well, is this going to be a brand or is it going to be more like a product name? Like a generic, just red paint simply. Next question was, are we going to be a product brand or are we going to be an organizational brand, a corporate brand, meaning a we brand? And then, is it all a paint? Is it about function or is it also about emotions? And then, what are the different values we can associate to this product? So these were the management questions. And then I said, well, I'm from the south of Sweden, so I have to say that I do not really understand the heritage of these red and white houses, they are more up in the north. And then my friend Johan, that was the name not of the king, but also of the new CEO, as it happens. He said, look, I will show you now some slides of pictures, so you maybe will understand what it is all about. And there is also some music I will play, and I will replicate this the best I can, all right?
Från den trygga gamla kyrkan klingar sången ända hit. Jag har stannat vid vägen för att vila mig ett tag och blev fångad i det gränsland som förenar natt och dag. Och ett sken ifrån ljusen bakom fönstrets bergvallon har förenat de stjärnor.
Beautiful, right? Yes, beautiful. So then we said, okay, let's try to answer the questions. Let's try to answer the questions that helps us to define the brand. What engages, promise, competences, and so forth. Just repeating. And looking at this company, we said, so what is our mission? What's our purpose? And we agreed that it was about living and activating the value of a cultural heritage. The promise was something we heard from a French architect coming visiting the small town where they produced the red paint. The French architect, he said, I would like to see a red house. And Johan, the CEO, he said, I can do better than that. I can show you a red and white town. And the French architect, he was so impressed when he saw the church, the all houses, everything red and white. He said, this is a Swedish marble. We have the Eiffel Tower, you have the red and white houses. So we said that. And the core values: protect, preserve, and engage. And we wanted this brand to be modern in all times. This is important because when you work with heritage, it's easy to fall into nostalgia. It might work for some, but in this case, we wanted to be in the past, present, and future, meaning that we would like to have our brand in 3 time zones. So what did we know better than others? Well, not much, but we had 250 years of craftsmanship, silent knowledge. Now, when we said, what is the value proposition? It would be easy to say, well, it is red paint, because that would make sense. It is red paint. But the choice here was to find something that was unique to this product, and that was the luster. Because the paint goes into the wood and doesn't go like a flat, dead surface on the wood. So true luster. Something about the organization, how to work and be in an organization with a heritage. Relationships, longing to come home. Very emotional. You have your little red and white cottage and you long to come home. Emotion, and then expression. Now, this is actually turning a product into something much more. And this is branding, and this is brand building. And now we have to show how we actually do this. Not just brand say, but brand do. So, modern at all times. Well, consider these pictures. Modern in all times. Actually black as well, because we burnt the pigment a bit harder. Modern in all time. Now, how can one small company come up with a very limited budget, come up with all these beautiful buildings? Well, we had a red paint award inviting architects to do their best. And then they had a small award, and we had fantastic references. We acquired, I say we acquired a small company doing the white linol paint. We created a beautiful blanket to illustrate the brand. It's all in wool, illustrating the brand's character. And then we started to communicate with different ways. We had new products. We started to use Instagram, and we asked people to upload pictures on what is true luster. We interviewed people, what is life like in a red cottage, to illustrate relationships. And of course, we came back to King Johan's story, which is a signature story, the kind of foundation story for the whole thing here. And I think that what is important when you have a heritage brand, you have to tell its story. Once you have defined its identity with the help of the matrix, next would be to say, well, what are the stories we need to tell? You can tell stories about your promise. You can tell stories about engagement and change. You can tell stories about how and why heritage makes the brand unique. You can tell stories about the track record, how you have actually fulfilled what you have promised over 10 years, 30 years, 100 years, 200 years. You can tell stories about what is the actual value of being authentic. What does it bring? You can tell stories about people living the brand, employees and others. You can tell stories about what is it like to be part of history making. You are in a company where history is ongoing. And you can tell stories about the character of the brand. You can tell stories about the symbols and icons of the brand, the design of the brand. And this is exactly what the Red Company did. You know, the example that I just showed actually shows how they have managed to create a full corporate brand story, actually engaging and activating the entire matrix with all its identity triggers. And good news for the Red Company, we had a turnaround and results are now good. And I will end my speech, and sorry for taking a bit extra time, but we are in Italy. So, sorry about that. You can hit me later, Angelo. No, principles of brand leadership. I think actually the most important one is bringing the brand into the room. So what I mean with this, bringing the brand into the room, I'm trying to say that what I heard, first time I heard this was from a person from IKEA, and he said, you know, sometimes when decisions are made and they are not that great, we have forgotten to think about the brand. And to bring the brand into the room means that you, in your executive team, people around you, the entire organization needs to actually understand what you are doing. I mean, if you are working at the Mont Blanc company doing pens, you must understand, yes, we do pens, but they actually stand for something else. Or if you're doing red paint, you will understand, yes, we are producing a red paint, but it actually has an emotional dimension that is very, very important. So when I say bring the brand into the room, I actually mean this. I mean, you have to think about the identity, how it is communicated, and also how it is perceived by the people around you. So that is reputation. And I know this is a big task. I understand that. But nevertheless, nobody said this was going to be easy. But I hope I have given you an overview that will give you a better understanding of what this might be. So I think we have to remember we are managing brands with a heritage, and there are 3 time zones. They have a past that we can activate. There is a present where we have to show why it's important, why authenticity is of value. And then we have to look into the future and say, how can we continue to be relevant with our offerings also into the future? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mats. Thank you for your presentation. I think this presentation clearly pointed out once again that heritage is not just about oldness or history, but it's structured continuity and adaptive capacity, as the case that you clearly is illustrated. And also, this presentation emphasized the concept of embeddedness. We need a more identity-embedded perspective to activate corporate heritage brands, and your matrix in this perspective is very useful. So thank you. And now we can see how the customer perceive or react to this kind of strategy. So I give the floor to Fabien Pecot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And first, I'd like to start by thanking you, Angelo, Antonella, and Maria Rosaria, for it's the 3rd time I'm lucky enough to be in Naples, and it's always a wonderful experience. So thank you for inviting me. This second presentation is going to zoom in a way, from some of the aspects that Mats has mentioned, particularly the expression of the stories and their relation to a certain value proposition. The funny thing is, I usually start my presentation with the painting as well, but not today. I usually start with one by Goya, that is the last bit of the irony in it. It's actually in Sweden. It's owned by a Swedish museum, and I also saw it when I was doing my PhD, so that was a very interesting coincidence. But I'm going to talk about the consumer approach to brand heritage, which means we shift a little bit from the managerial work, although we have to start from what managers do, and we look at what it makes, how we, as because we are all consumers as well, how we perceive and how we process this. It can be in terms of behaviors, it can be in terms of attitudes, and it can also be in terms of sense making. It depends if you take a more experimental or more qualitative approach.
You prefer this one because they are not listening very well.
I actually prefer it, I think, so I can move, because I have a hard time staying at the same spot. So it will ask this question of perceived value, not the created one, but the one people see. And today, so I don't have Goya, but I have one landscape, one I'm sure you know, and it starts with the classic author of heritage, not in marketing, Alois Riegel. It was from Austria, and Alois Riegel wrote this book, The Modern Cult of Monuments, in 1903, long time ago. And it has been one of the most influential books when people think about heritage, because it served as the basis for the Athens Charter, then the Venice Charter, that themselves were influential for the way UNESCO thinks about heritage. And the reason I'm mentioning this, and remembering also a good time I had in Pompeii, is Alois Riegel thinks outlines 3 different values of why we engage with monuments and sites. And I think these 3 values are important for marketers if we are going to think about what it does to people. Because when brands use their heritage, they do something to people, and it's similar to what it does to us to interact with a place such as Pompeii. Maybe not that strong, it depends on people, but it's along the same lines. It talks about commemorative value, that is relates psychologically to sort of desire for immortality, the thrill we have when we realize that something human beings have done can outlive a human being. Things that were built 2,000 years ago are still here, and it makes something to us as human beings. He talks about the historical value, the way we enjoy organizing time and understanding, okay, that was done, and then this was done, and organizing time like this, and seeing monuments and putting them in place helps us, and we enjoy this organization work. And age value, the fascination we have for the action of time. We're very anxious about the action of time in general, but when we see it on stones, it's a completely different story. It triggers something related to desire, with their relation or obsession, fascination for death. And I'll get back to this, you see, at the end of the presentation. On a more prosaic scale, maybe, what does it mean to study consumer reactions to brand heritage? Well, it's basically asking this question: what happens when you see a market expression of heritage? So what does happen when you see an advertising that activates heritage? What happens when you see a change in the design of a packaging that would highlight more heritage? What do you feel, what do you think when you see that a brand like Martini is 160 years? So it's understanding what we see and what it does to us. So credibility, maybe, attachment, nostalgia, prestige, these are the key elements that have been seen in the literature, but basically it gets down to asking questions about what are the heritage cues and understanding, categorizing them, and what are the effects. So today I'll talk about the cues and the effects in a very, maybe not very original, but didactic way. So if we think about the cues first, and I've tried to design this keynote in a way of telling you what do we know in terms of research and what we don't know, and also thinking about PhD students or people interested in research who would like to continue this work that we've been doing for a couple of years. So if we think about cues, I think we need to go beyond longevity, unpacking longevity. A cue first, and maybe the most obvious, is the date. Many brands use the date, like Heinz, and we know that the date has some effect. But what about this other example? Sometimes dates are not really about longevity. Sometimes they're playing with us. And I think it's a sign that we should probably go beyond just a date is longevity. When a date is only 6 years, this is probably not heritage, not to your standards anyway, but maybe something else is happening, and maybe there's some humor in playing with dates. Another cue are narratives. We know narratives. You talked about stories, of course. This very famous Italian pasta brand, they tell their story behind. It's not the only one. Many brands like to tell their history behind the packaging. And we know that it works. And I'm also conscious of a very recent contribution in the Journal of Marketing that sheds light on the play with transparency, and say that when you tell a story, being in a museum or in a packaging, you want to reveal, you want to give some kind of access to something consumers do not know, but at the same time, you don't want to say too much. Right? So that's something we could unpack as well in terms of the cues, and understanding that maybe going deeper in the ambiguous relationship that marketing has with truth, which maybe we'll touch upon again when we talk about the difference with history. When we talk about cues, obviously the visual cues, because we, particularly when we like to do experiments in marketing, we love text because visual is a lot of noise, experimentally speaking. So we're more comfortable with text. But this is not how real-life marketing works. Real-life marketing is about image. It is about visual communication more than text. So in this research, Mike Arthur and I were trying to look at the way designers translate heritage. When, as a marketing manager, you tell your advertising agency, I want the advert to show my history, how do designers then translate this into certain colors, certain shapes, ornaments, illustration, so on and so forth? And what we found, what was very interesting, is that they articulate these cues to tell different kind of stories. Sometimes it's about legitimacy, but sometimes it's about humor. Sometimes it's mostly about aesthetic, and sometimes it's purely nostalgic. Again, something to go beyond pure longevity. And finally, I think one frontier in terms of cues is the material aspect. It's very ironic. I find it very ironic that I remember who said this morning from this very spot. You reminded us that heritage starts with objects and then move to more intangible cues. I find it extremely ironic that in marketing we started from the intangible. And so far, not many researchers look at the materiality of heritage in marketing. It's very recent that we ask ourselves these questions when we know that it is primarily what heritage is about. And to do this, if we are going to go in that direction, I think we can rely, fortunately, on designers. Designers do a lot of research on materiality. That's not a big surprise. And in marketing, the consumer culture theory has engaged heavily with materiality. We can probably take some elements to understand how that works. And, oops, sorry. And thinking about these cues, I wanted to share with you an idea. So it's really work in progress. It's something I built for this keynote, and it's very unfinished. It's only the beginning, but I think we can articulate the meanings of longevity, so legitimacy, humor, the different articulation of heritage with the different forms of the cue, and it could look like something like this. Very simple. I took one of my papers where the designers were talking about their assemblage of longevity, and another one distinguishing the cues of longevity with the cues of values. And I was thinking even the values we could go beyond, because values is a very broad category. We could talk at the very least about progressive and regressive values, and that would be a different way of articulating heritage. And we could cross-analyze this with textual cues, visual cues, material cues, and getting to some kind of table like this. Particularly if we start adding more than these two papers, that the first one I could think about, I think we would have a better idea of what the cues for heritage are and their diversity. We could probably categorize them. I see a lot of interesting stuff coming out of this. That's for the cues. Then if I talk about the effects, what do we know about the effects and what could we explore next? I think the usual suspects are cognitive and affective. It's very basic in marketing, and we know that it's been very well documented. When you show heritage cues to consumers, they tend to believe the brand has some kind of credibility. It's been also proven in psychology. The challenge, I think, now is to identify more moderators. When does it stop to work? Because this effect seems to be extremely stable, but we know it cannot be as simple as this. So when does it stop to work? On the affective side, we know, obviously, that when you see heritage cues, you're more likely to feel nostalgic, good. But at the same time, and I think this is maybe one challenge we will need to address, we know that heritage cues also increase the temporal distance. And we know that the temporal distance reduces the effect that we know from psychology, I mean. How can we solve this? I think this is an interesting question, as well as cross-cultural. I was very happy to see that there's more data collection in other countries. I think more cross-cultural research on this point would be very interesting. If we look beyond this, one of my favorite things at the moment is to think about social consequences. And look, I didn't plan for your example on Patek Philippe. I'm happy you did. It gives even another connection between our presentations. I think we should build more on sociology, and I know as someone who does a lot of experiments that this is not what my colleagues like, but I think we should, because only thinking about Bourdieu's distinction, but also the enrichment, so the Boltanski-Scale book 6 years ago, I think there's something to dig in, because we know that in sociology, we know that the past, expressions of the past strengthen relationships. We know that it's heavily used in older aristocratic families to educate children about their lineage, about their position in society. We know that companies use it. I think we could go beyond in looking at the role of heritage brands in status signaling. We could go beyond in the transmission, the way, like Patek Philippe, the role that these brands play in transmission strategies, and the enriching of products with heritage stories as opposed to other kind of stories, I think is also a very promising avenue. A few others, if we're going to, in consumer behavior research, we typically look at the main effect, then we try to explain this effect, and then we're very interested in moderators. Again, when it stops to work or when it works differently. And there's a lot of research on moderators, boundary conditions at the consumer level. So we know that when people are more interested in the past than in the future, they pay more attention. Okay, not a big surprise. But what about what I find more interesting, also managerially speaking, are moderators that are due to a managerial action. I shared with you two examples of research we did with a colleague on the framing of the advertisement being more abstract or more concrete. And we could see that it works well when the advertisement is more concrete, it compensates for the temporal distance. Other researchers look at the role of heritage in product extension, again in framing more towards longevity or values, and it makes a big difference. So I think we should go beyond this, and I'll just remind again this idea of the performance of transparency. I think the amount of information that is revealed, how you reveal, how you hide, is probably a moderator that we should pay more attention to. Materiality I mentioned. I won't maybe repeat myself, because I will, yeah, I'm conscious of time. I would like to mention this avenue that I think is also very promising. There are multiple theories now going in the same directions, that managers doing hard work to articulate change and continuity, to evolve without signaling any radical change. At the moment, this is work that is mostly based on studying agencies and marketing departments. But do consumers see that? So the theories are pretty good managerially. Does that translate well? Can we maybe think about an idea of clarity or consistency between two designs that people would be able to see? And how can we capture empirically and maybe hopefully quantitatively the rupture that they would see or not see that could explain failures, such as this famous British redesign that caused a lot of problems for British consumers. And beyond, and I'll finish with this, beyond the failures, I think there's something, again, that we haven't looked too much at, but is promising, is the darker side of heritage. Any negative equity, anything in the history that we will prefer not to talk to, but yet maybe we have to one day. The case of historical transgressions, or the case of failure. And it's very easy to say that it's not good. If something bad happened 50 or 70 years ago, it will carry a negative equity. But at the same time, and I think that was my suggestion for further thought, there's something created in Sweden, Museum of Failure, that is extremely successful. So we have some interest in failure. And The picture at the top is from a French photographer that visited Detroit to capture decay of this great city. And he's selling these photography very expensive. Because why? And I'll get back to my introduction with Alois Riegel and this historical value, the interest, fascination, maybe morbid attraction we have for failure, decay. So I think even maybe the dark side of heritage might not be so negative after all. It might be more complex than just saying it's negative. And I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Fabien. Yeah, your presentation, I think, effectively illustrated the different nature of heritage cues used to activate the heritage, and also the meaning, the effects of these cues, and there is still a great potential in terms of research in this perspective, and I'm also happy that we are doing something together in this. Yeah. But now we are moving to the last presentation. I guess somehow Michael Rolison will connect the dots between the previous presentations.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can you hear me at the back? Right at the back. Yeah, great. So I'm okay with this. Okay, well, I'm a professor of management and organizational history, emeritus professor, in fact. So I could take up the invitation because I didn't have to rearrange my teaching. So thank you for the invitation to Napoli. I got the taxi from the airport to the hotel yesterday, and the driver told me it's just Napoli. And it came back to me years ago. I have been here before on my way to Ischia, and we picked up the hire car from the airport. And I can't remember whether my wife was driving and I was like that, or whether I was driving. Anyway, we got there. But seriously, this conference reminded me of a paper that I wrote over 20 years ago about a historic turn in organization studies. The idea that there was more interest, increasing interest in historical research in organization studies, which is my field. The paper was really arguing that organization studies thinks it's becoming more historical, but if you look at it closely, it's not really as historical as they think it is. So the paper was kind of ironic. Ironically, it turned out there was a historic turn underway, and not long after that, other theorists came up with concepts like rhetorical history, which has really taken off, possibly also in relation to corporate heritage. So there is a historic turn well established in organization studies. But we also thought that there is more interest in representations of the past, in heritage, for example, in rhetorical history. Most of the papers, if you look at them closely in rhetorical history, they're about representations of the past, representations of history, the uses of history, but they're not often based on actual historical research. And our interest was in historical research. In fact, what we were interested in were representations of the past in the past. And historians are very interested in that. How did people in the past think about their past? And I wonder if that's something that's underway in the marketing field. Following on from that, I set up a journal, Management and Organizational History, which has taken many of these papers, and I'm pleased to be cited for something that I predicted wouldn't happen. So it's nice for me that there's been a historic turn, and I thought it wouldn't happen. At the time we were writing business history, which is kind of the field that I'm related to, I was discussing this with Ilaria at lunchtime. The business history in the UK at that time was still very deferential to economic history. And I think it still is in Italy to some extent from what you were saying. There was a rise of organizational economics, transaction cost economics, and business historians thought that there would be a place for them using historical case studies to illustrate concepts like path dependency. And I think that's something that's happened in the strategy literature. So history has become a sort of factory for illustrative cases. But I was more interested in qualitative narrative history, the sort of history that requires immersion in a corporate archive, sitting in an archive, trawling through the documents, trying to make sense of them, trying to make sense of what they meant to the people at the time who were writing them. The motivation behind that was straightforward, because I had done a PhD many years ago based on the archives of Cadbury, the UK chocolate confectionery company. The first paper I published was in business history, which was fine. But then working in a business school, the boss said to me, you cannot only publish in business history journals. You need to publish in general management journals. There aren't that many business history journals anyway. The American Business History Review only really takes papers that are about American business history. So there were only 2 or 3 journals to choose from. So then I ran into the problem of trying to get historical papers into general management journals. Now, you know the format of a management journal article: introduction, literature review, the theory section, the methods, and then the findings. So what do you put in the methods section of a historical article for a social science or management journal? How do you justify the research method? So what annoyed me was talking to historians. They say, well, it's the historical method. Well, if it's the historical method, there's one historical method. That means that every historical paper that you submit to a management journal has the same method section. And the journals are not stupid. They're going to say, well, hold on, this method section looks a bit similar to the method section in another historical article. So they're going to reject it because it's virtually plagiarism, cut and paste, and that has happened. Part of the problem is that historians don't really explain their methods in their own research. They think of it like a craft skill. The method really are in the footnotes. They're notes to other historians. These are the practical things. The history is written, you know, you don't want to sit reading history on the beach and have to plow through some social scientific method section. So that's how historians aspire to write, so that you can take or leave the methods which are buried in the footnotes. So they're not used to articulating their methods in the way that social science management journals are. So historians would think it was pointless to articulate the method. And I've talked to some historical researchers in organization studies, and they confess that they only write a method section because the journals require it. It's purely to satisfy the editors that there was some thinking about the method. So I decided that a better approach would be to try to figure out some alternative approaches to doing qualitative historical research, so that the method section could then say, well, I could have done it this way, but I decided to do it that way. So you'd articulate your methodological standpoint within a range of possible historical methods. And I thought that that's what qualitative case study writers have done successfully in management. That's what the organizational culture studies people and the ethnographers have done to get their work published in management journals. So perhaps historians, historical researchers should follow that example. So how does this relate to corporate and brand strategy? Well, I think there is something like a historic turn underway in marketing. And in preparing for this conference, I came across a really nice article. Is it Research Applications on Marketing? Is that a decent journal? Yeah, that's the best we have in Research on Application on Marketing. The best in France. The best marketing journal in France? Okay, and there's an editorial, The Turn to Historical Approaches in Marketing Research. So perfect for anyone doing historical research. You need to read this and probably cite it. That's why they wrote it. Yeah, and in fact, it's a really helpful article. It shows an increase in the number of historical papers being published in journals. It's got a chart that goes up like that. You always want a chart like that. There are thousands. There used to be dozens. Now there are thousands. It doesn't also say that there are many more thousands of marketing journals and publications, but we'll ignore that. But it's a serious piece of, and helpfully the authors, is it Shaney and Michelle, give us a neat definition of what they mean. Historical approaches in marketing and consumer research consist of using past data as opposed to contemporary data. I'd prefer if they said sources rather than data, but I don't want to be too semantic. To study marketing strategies or consumption phenomena in a contextualized and critical manner. And it's the contextualized which is really important, because they don't just mean using data from the past, they mean data that you use contextualized in the historical period in which that data was produced. So I can live with that definition. The emphasis on evidence from the past and contextualize it, I think works well. And then they go into various types of data, different sources that you can use from archives. And as is expected in a management journal, possibly in marketing, there's a 2x2 matrix. There's a 2x2 matrix, and so immediately they produce 4 approaches. I'm not going to go through the 4 approaches, you can read it for yourself, but it's a really helpful outline of 4 different approaches. So in your methods section, in a marketing journal, you can cite this article from a reputable journal saying, well, there are 4 possible approaches I could take, and I chose this one, which is ideal to locate yourself. And I think also it will help you, if you're thinking of writing a historical article, it will help you to position yourself in relation to the methods. Now, let me quickly turn to the heritage question. How does it relate to heritage? Well, I think there's a historic turn well underway in marketing, and that mainly manifests itself in an interest in heritage. Now, I started looking at the heritage literature 25 years ago because I visited Cadbury World, which is a very successful visitor attraction. And part of Cadbury World, like many visitor attractions, it has a representation of the past of the company. So I read the heritage literature from historians, and historians are overwhelmingly skeptical towards heritage, very suspicious of it. There was a debate about heritage, particularly in the 1980s and 1990s in the UK. This is a typical quote: instead of manufacturing goods, we are manufacturing heritage, a commodity which nobody seems able to define, but everybody is eager to sell. That was a more journalistic approach, probably located in the UK of the time. A more thoughtful and theoretical approach comes from the historian David Lowenthal. Just before this conference, I picked up his book from the bookshelf, The Heritage Crusade and the Spoils from History, published in 1998. And he sets up a dichotomy between history and heritage. He contrasts the heritage past with the historical past. I'll just give you a quote. I opened the book. I haven't read it for probably 20 years. I probably haven't picked it up. And I opened the page 147, almost at random. It's the last page of a chapter. And he says, the heritage past that I've just described in this chapter, the heritage past may seem unseemly. It's jumbled, malleable, a malleable amalgam, ever reshaped by this or that partisan interest. Flying in the face of known facts. It's opaque or perverse for those who don't share its faith. Those who do share it, though, find heritage far more serviceable than the stubborn and unpredictable past that's revealed by history. So historians are very skeptical towards heritage. They were then, I think they are now. So I went round Cadbury World looking for the potential conflict between corporate heritage and the representation of history, especially in relation to the management of labour, because I'd just spent 4 years immersed in an archive. So I felt, well, I know the history. Now I'm looking at the corporate heritage, the corporate representation, but I don't think many people do that, and I'd be very pleased. I'm looking forward to the sessions today because I see there's many mentions of archival research, but the historians come to heritage with a view that this is Disneyfication, this is McDonaldization, whatever. Okay, thank you. Can I just say,
thank you.
I asked you to remind me at 5 minutes.
Yeah, but you were perfectly on time. Yeah.
I was, but I'd like to remind the audience that
Yes.
we have to be very disciplined. I've worked out you've got 15 minutes.
Yes, yes.
So everyone must be on time, please.
Yes, we asked our keynote to be very precise in terms of presentation, and I agree with Michael's invitation to be precise with your presentation now, because we are going to just to close this session. First of all, if there are, we can just take probably 1 or 2 comments or questions, if any, from the audience. Do we have any final comments? Michaela, you want to add? No, you did, no? Yeah, micro.
A question to Mats. It's correct the name, I'm sorry. Okay. I was just the last part of the matrix. Just if you can explain better regarding the last part. It's about
probably repetition.
No, 25 years of silent. This part I didn't get very well. I'm sorry. Maybe if you silent technology something.
Yes. So thank you for your question. So the company producing this traditional paint, it was a very, very simple product. It is a pigment. It is linseed oil. It's water. And it's oatmeal, and you cook it, and you have the paint. So it's a very ordinary product. It has been used for a long, long, long time. Now, when the company, the red paint company, wanted to tell their story, they asked themselves, do we have anything that is unique? What do we know better than than our competitors? And the answer is, It's a very simple product to produce. However, there was one aspect, and that was finding exactly the right red shade of the pigment. And this knowledge was actually in the hands, the craftsmanship, the legendary knowledge of producing this pigment for hundreds of years. So it was actually craftsmanship. It has nothing to do with machines. It has nothing to do with technology. It was pure craftsmanship.
Thank you. We have another question.
Thanks, Professor Mats, for your speech. I have a question. I was wondering, what you suggest to the firms that have to, conduct the path, especially for the firms that today live the era of market diversification to maintain their identity today, because their portfolio products are very, very different. And sometimes I think that it's difficult for these firms that today live the era of diversification. So, in your opinion, what is the best path to conduct, this, observation of maintaining, identity and also at the same time longevity? And I was wondering to firms like Colors are as Amazon or something like that, from now to the next 50 years, for example. Thank you very much.
I've been thinking, I'm not sure that this would be the answer to your question, but it came to my mind. I think one thing that we all can see is designed in California, produced somewhere else. And we are now in a situation, when I say we, I mean probably the Western world, where we have a long heritage, or history, or heritage, of actually having to produce things, knowing how to produce precision tools, producing the best cotton, producing food, I don't know, all the knowledge of actually producing, a bit like the red paint. I mean, what's in your hands and your mind and heart. Now, I think we are outsourcing things in a pace that is something to consider seriously, because when you detach the knowledge of producing things from the capability of managing your brand, meaning your image, your reputation, I think you are in trouble. That is my thought, and I would say, if this was not the answer to your question, I'd be happy to speak with you later on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Maybe one final, if any? No? Okay, so thank you once again to our three keynote speakers, and now...
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angelo.
Yes, we are now moving to the parallel session. We have 6 different sessions, 6 different rooms. Paola will show us, will inform us how to reach.
Yeah, just logistical information. So room 1 is this one. You just stay if you are in room 1. Room 2, 3, 4 are in the other building. So you move, you can go into the church. There is an elevator, you take it and you go up 1 floor and you find your rooms. For uploading your slides, there is a guide there helping you to upload your slides on the laptop. Room 5 and 6 are on the ground floor. So 2 floors down with the elevator or with the scales. Thank you. Stairs.
Professor of Management,
Oh,
and I work with museum mainly.
very
Or
interesting.
exclusively. And so my question is,
Museums.
have you ever worked on a museum brand?
Actually, yes.
Yeah?
Yes. I've been in contact with the Volvo Group,
Okay.
and they have established very newly more what they would call a corporate storytelling, I think. It's in the heart of Gothenburg. It's a beautiful building, and they tell the story of Volvo cars, Volvo Penta, Volvo buses. So, yeah, so I have worked with that, and I find it to be quite interesting. And we have also the Absolute Vodka Museum.
Okay.
It is also, I think, a very modern, approachable, good example of how to tell a story. But of course, they are two very different products.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Yeah.
You know, drinking and driving.
They are connected.
No.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
In any case, I work as I teach and produce, but I work as a consultant.
Yes.
Strategy.
Okay, very good.
And so the branding, it's
Yes,
very huge.
very important.
And while in Italy, we are not really focused on this.
Well, I've been to
In the cultural heritage.
I've been to Modena with the Ferrari museum.
Yes. But
It's nice.
Sorry. Thank you.
corporate consumer is very different from the other. Yes, it's okay.
Allora. Quale PowerPoint, se si può? Come? No, ogni room carica la sua. In quale room? 5? Ok, 2 piani sotto e c'è già il ragazzo che aspetta per... Ok. Perfetto. Sì. Grazie. Sì. Gioia Paolam con la M finale, Gioia Paola tutto attaccato. Questo è per questo, se lo vogliamo usare dove lo metto?
Qui.
Ah, perfetto.
Però penso che se
@gmail.com. Perfetto.
ti chiedono le presentazioni stai a staccare
Ah,
a
vero.
attaccare.
Hai ragione. Qualcun altro deve caricare... Ah, ok.
Allora, Napoli non ho più PowerPoint, l'ultimo, giusto un PowerPoint.
Sì, l'ultimo è PowerPoint. Questo qui, sì. Ok. Allora, voi sapete che numero siete in ordine? Non mi ricordo. Quindi... Okay. Le ultime quindi eravate 5 o 6 nella... mi pare 5 in questo. Sì, 5. Ok, e invece Martina è l'ultimo. L'ultime? Allora non è la prossima, va bene. Allora questo. Ecco qua, grazie a voi. Allora, via mail. Manca qualcun altro? Con la chiavetta?
Viene registrato, cioè viene mandata in streaming
No.
oppure no?
No, solo la
plenaria.
Abbiamo stoppato lo streaming? Dalila. Marco, stai con me perché se mi chiamano dalle classi ti mando. Arrivo. Sì.